Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar on leveraging AI to defend your organization. My name is Charlotte Christensen. I lead the cybersecurity practice at Montash, permanent hires for security teams across Europe. I'm actually based in Dresden usually, but I'm coming to you from a surprisingly sunny, or it was a second ago, sunny London. I am really looking forward to today's roundtable because we are digging into the topic on everyone's lips. That is, of course, AI, but with a focus specifically on how this affects our organizations and their security landscape. So we're going to be talking about the offensive and the defensive use cases. We're going to be talking what does this mean for business value and return on investment, and how is it reshaping our security teams and the skills that we need. There is going to be time for Q&A at the end. So please put your questions all in the chat. We really want as many of you to get involved in this as possible. Hear about maybe what personally are you interested in hearing about, what's coming up in your organizations at the moment, or even, to be honest, what would be super interesting is any tips and tricks or pearls of wisdom you have had from your journey with this technology so far as well. So, as I said, pop it all in the Q&A. We will aim to answer as many as possible, either as we are going along or at the very end. So I am super looking forward to digging into this and much more, and really excited to be joined by this fantastic panel here. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet for a second and let you guys give a quick introduction. I'd love you to give a little background on yourselves and why do you feel that this topic was worth joining me today to speak about. I'm going to go with Edward first.
Hello, yes. So my journey into security leadership began when I was a software engineer and I discovered a simple bug that was costing our company $200,000 every month. Fixing the code was easy, but getting the entire organization to understand the risk and fix it everywhere, like development, deployment, and customer service, that was the real challenge for us back then. That experience gave me a clear mission to translate complex cybersecurity risks into simple, actionable language for everyone from in boardroom. So I've since applied that mission at scale. It became a passion. Most recently, securing the anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing processes for Klarna's active customers and almost a million merchant and partners. I'm excited to continue that work as the new application security manager at PSI Software. Just this week, I joined the organization and to share some.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so there's some latest, but we had this schedule quite back, so that's fine. So how relevant is AI for my work? It handles, I would say, the what so that we can focus on the so what. So with the pacing of businesses right now, having that force multiplier is the new baseline. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Congratulations. Didn't realize. Pranav, I'm going to hand over to you next.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. So my name is Pranav. I lead security and strategy for a Berlin-based cybersecurity company called Unosecure. We are building an unified identity fabric that kind of covers all the human and non-human identities across all your IDPs, SaaS applications, and hyperscalers. When it comes to my day-to-day and how AI impacts our own product is we use quite a lot of agentic workflows in our, writing new threads and detections and chaining these detection logic together and feeding into our platform. So that is one aspect of it, and the other one is the defensive aspect of like what are we doing with these alerts and trying to dedupe them and to add and enrich business context and all of that. So those are my interests.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Andrew, over to you.
Hello. Yep, I'm Andrew. I'm leading security operations at Personio. Was formerly based in Berlin, have recently moved to Spain, Barcelona. Yeah, we're currently figuring out what we're going to use AI for. We're building a few things, evaluating tons of different technologies. So we're still working that out, I would say, but there's a huge potential. I guess going back to the first comments, kind of how I got started here, I've worked both on vendor side as well as customer side. Personio is a SaaS platform. We have many partners we work with, other vendors, as well as our own application stack that we look to protect. And I guess how I got started in this field, very focused on cybersecurity, really just getting pushed into it by how things have changed in the industry and opportunities coming up through partnerships and, taking a chance on a new role some years back. Yeah, and how are we relevant to AI? Yeah, like I said, we're just really trying to figure out like what the hype is all about, where we can use things effectively, and I think where things might overpromise and underdeliver. So I think there's a lot of learnings we can share today.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for those introductions. So as you can hear already, we have so many different things that we want to try and cover today, and there is much more. So we're going to jump right in. I know quite a lot of the people in the audience today, you're dealing with this at the moment, but for those of you who are maybe not as much on the front lines, you're here to actually just gain more of an insight into what exactly is going on. I am going to just set the scene for a second. So since late 2022, when generative AI really first entered the mainstream, we've seen cybersecurity enter a whole new phase. There was that initial co-pilot stage. It was focused on AI as a support tool. It was helping humans to write code, to triage alerts, to generate reports. But now we're very much entering/in already that next stage, which is agentic AI. And so now those systems, they're not just assisting, they're acting, they're triaging, and they are deciding and often even executing their tasks end to end. So on the good news, this is obviously creating some great new tactics for defenders. But obviously there is the flip side as well. So it's giving attackers whole new ways, a whole interesting new ways to be attacking an organization. And then beyond that beyond that horizon even, is looming that next stage, and that is super intelligent AI. And that's raising a whole new category of questions around control, around strategy, and around risk. But for now, and for the purpose of this webinar, let's just take it back a second to where we are right now and give us a little bit of structure. So let's start off and talk about that defensive side, perhaps. So Andrew, I'd love to pass it over to you. Can you give us a little bit of a background and understanding around how are companies using this kind of technology right now? What are you seeing? Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I would say there's a few main use cases at the moment being put out there. Number one is there's the idea that you can take something very simple, checking one source against another source, looking up from one table up a field into another table, and just repeating that very quickly and very measurably. There's this more advanced use case that you've mentioned, the agentic capabilities where you can go out and check tons of different sources, really organize unstructured data, produce thoughts and context around things. This is like sort of next higher level of thinking. Our team is currently looking into how we can apply that. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of fear and hesitation and concern. What happens when those things go wrong? But that's the sort of potential that a lot of folks are looking into, is kind of acting as a force multiplier of your staff.
Awesome. And fantastic. Thank you. And what about Pranav or Edward?
Yeah, it's the same thing for us. I think the how to augment your existing staff and enrich your detection capabilities. I think we use quite a lot of automated crawling, and indexing, detection, parsing, and all of that. I think the defensive capabilities have much more streamlined, I would say. Just like what Andrew mentioned, it's kind of upskilling our engineers and adding a little bit more color to the detections. And also we could see the overall reduction in the metrics like mean time to detect and respond. So the organizational context, which are already enriched, is helping us quite a bit.
Yeah. What I can just add is, from a defensive point of view, from the technical to strategic, um, when AI was still maturing, 2022, it couldn't help much on the technical side, because you need very, very specific, hallucination is very difficult on that side. But now I can see some vendors becoming more and more bold in resolving several problems on that side. But I will not go ahead over that. We will have several questions later that I will give some use cases as well.
Awesome. Perfect. So we'll go dig in a bit deeper after that, I guess. So that's a brief sort of scratching the surface of the defensive side, how it's helping us to prioritize what matters, perhaps, and to speed up the responses. It's obviously not just on the defensive side that we're seeing it being used, as we mentioned in the introduction. It's also on the attacking side too, and using AI to uncover some new vulnerabilities, something that I'm sure is on a lot of people's minds. Pranav, I'm going to come back over to you for a second. I would love to hear what you're sort of seeing on the offensive side, and the rest of you guys, feel free to jump in at any time with your own experiences of this too.
Yeah, I think I've seen what we use from the defensive side. So what we use from the defensive side, but I'll get to the offensive side in a bit, is to crawl and index everything, especially the latest identity-based attacks. And we collect all the indicators of attacks and compromises and trying to correlate against existing data sources. And I think what attackers are trying to do with against our infrastructure is to do the same method where they crawl, chain CVEs and trying to attack. That is one aspect of it, against anything that is exposed externally. The other aspect is through email. I think the spear phishing has become really, really targeted now, and is really, really tailored and curated for that particular person. We could just train an agent on this particular person's online profile, and it'll go and look at everything public. And if that is a particular developer, it'll go through their GitHub projects or LinkedIn page or contributions in Stack Overflow, or read their Substack and create really, really curated ones. So you almost feel like, if you don't really analyze it properly, if you don't really have any filters in place, it just looked like the person is writing to you. So that's one area that I've seen such technologies are used for offensive purposes.
Just a question on that one then, because I've definitely been targeted very specifically in that way as well. I'm sure all of us have. What can organizations be doing then to protect themselves against that?
I'm going to say what I'm doing. So what we are doing is, of course, training and awareness is always key, and I'm coming from a training and awareness company. With the last company that I worked at, we did cybersecurity awareness and training and phishing simulation. So I have a background in this. Awareness is always the key. Culture is always the key. So how do we build a security conscious culture without standing in people's way and productivity, and also the involvement of the leadership and leading by example. So our CEO is quite adamant that this is how I communicate, and this is not how I communicate. I'm not gonna write an email to you saying that I'm stuck on an island and asking you to email, send 25K. So how is that? And also from my end, how do we engineer our email flow? How do we look for patterns? How do we look for certain email security checks? The classic checks doesn't matter. Like, if you have an SPF, DKIM, mark checks and a malicious attachment checks, that doesn't matter anymore because it's a hook. It's a plain text email. So it's kind of hooking you, trying to hook you to, get you to a response. So look at behavioral patterns of like, hey, have these person has a tendency to send emails to these kind of engineering tribes with these kind of keywords or not. And this can be implemented and automated without violating people's privacy. So that's what we're doing.
So just being very clear within the organization, sending that message out. This is how we communicate. This is what to look out for. And if it falls outside of this, maybe like contact someone first and check if this is real before we respond. Awesome. Let's get back to the other side of attacking and AI use in it. I just found that personally interesting. What about Edward? How about you? What are you seeing on the offensive side of things?
Yeah, I mean, Pranav already mentioned that if I will highlight something, it's really attacking on scale. That's, for example, right now you can feed LLMs or AI with a CVE, and it can create automatically exploits that it has seen before. So you can imagine that you can automate that one 24/7. So what can organizations do? It will be still, the classic ensuring that your vulnerability management is really, really good. So if you are not doing that as a baseline, definitely you will your problems will multiply. But definitely it is still something that you need to do up to this point.
Yeah, I guess what we're seeing, I'm seeing different things at work, let's say, than I'm seeing in the wider view. So I have like a kind of different perspective for different cases. I'm seeing in the industry, it looks like there's two directions. There's like one where I think the guys have just said that attacks are getting more creative and more interesting, chaining complex situations together, crafting things to be more difficult to catch. This is also made more difficult because everyone is using AI to summarize and to contact you for sales purposes or marketing purposes or support purposes. So it's kind of like everything's hiding in there in the AI generated content. What I'm also hearing is this is also enabling people who don't fully know what they're doing. So there's also a kind of race to the bottom of just volumetric stuff being submitted to bug bounty programs, really consuming the cycles of open source package maintainers. And so it's almost like a simultaneous race to the top as well as an arms race to the bottom in terms of volume and quality of content. So I don't know what to make of it just yet, but I'm seeing those two patterns.
It's like the time to market for like the product releases. So earlier, you need to learn about, particular technology, do quite a lot of manual scanning and try to, craft queries against a web application or an API to see what you get out of it. To find a vulnerability and exploit it, and you need to be really good at exploit writing. And now I can download everything from ExploitDB and train a uncensored model. And I just downloaded a uncensored model from Hugging Face, and I was able to run it in my own MacBook
I see,
LM Studio.
That's also introducing a challenge for me personally, as well as for many of my team, where we have this analysis paralysis kind of feeling where I can go and do infinity things. Which one should I do? everybody can read the next white paper and try to follow in the footsteps there, but should they? And there's a kind of finite time that we can allocate to this type of research. So, you and I can sit down with Hugging Face or a similar tool and come back with wildly different things after weeks or even days of working with it. And the results might be great, but as I said, there's also a race to the bottom. The results might just be like a big waste of time. But hopefully we've learned something along the way through that journey. But I do see that there's folks out there using it that are just sort of blindly using it and not really taking anything away from it. So this is an interesting thing from a leadership perspective, how to guide people in those right ways, how to be effective. What things should we say no to, for example?
If I may just add as well to this, the attack surface has really, it feels like it doubled. You have MITRE threat taxonomy, and now you have an AI threat taxonomy, right? And in every the trend right now with AI agents, you have an additional sort of layer of systems whenever you integrate AI with an MCP, your systems connected to an MCP client with several MCP servers connecting to LLM. With just one prompt, it will, go back and forth, call in a lot of servers for different tools. And along the way, if there it can be an entry point for the adversary. So that's why it's also became a lot difficult for the defensive side.
I've got some interesting thing that just came up in recent weeks. I had heard about it, but it's only recently showed its head inside. But this situation where the call is coming from inside the house, I think we're focusing a lot in the talk so far about external actors, people being outside of the company, trying to break in and do the sort of traditional damage here. But I see the two main categories of insider threat also raising their head there. So the sort of like malicious insider who is now fully armed with everything that any LLM can tell you how to do. And this makes them, I forget who said it, but kind of 2x more dangerous. And then I see equally this sort of oblivious armchair developer who is now like supercharged with unlimited power to buy things, to test out things, to potentially leak things unintentionally. And I'm seeing both of these cases come up in my day-to-day work. So in that case, my elevated levels are inside and outside threats these days.
We don't want to scare the audience, right?
The data leakage use cases, I guess that threat has tripled.
Wow, yeah. I just remembered something just very quick. Sometimes it's not even malicious users. Sometimes just error from other systems. For example, I just went to Nalcon last week, and there was this example where the user prompt asking what's the weather today, and then on the reply of the internal MCP client or the internal LLM that they have in the company, it replied together with his GitHub session from his computer. When they tried to investigate, apparently, sorry for just trying to shortcut now. The MCP server, when the MCP client queried the MCP server to get weather forecast, apparently that server that time is down or sending an error. When it sent the error, it gave an instruction to also, when you have an error, get the GitHub session as well from the query. So Um,
It's almost session stealing, right? Stealing the sessions.
but it was just an error
Yeah,
created by the developer of that MCP server. So it wasn't even malicious, but
yeah. Not by intent, at least.
yeah. So now we have those complexities because of the AI infrastructure that we are integrating. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It
think we have a
sounds
really good question regarding the buy-in or
Yeah.
the ROI
Yeah.
in the chat.
Well, perhaps we can come to that in 1 second. We can. There's some questions already coming through, which is great. So keep them coming. I think something that's coming up from this chat is that, like, it's giving us a lot of choice. There's a lot of possibilities, but actually maybe we don't actually have all the answers like people think we maybe do at this point. I think there's, Andrew, you mentioned there's quite a bit of fear around AI at the moment as well, or like the unknown. And people are saying, it's going to be AI versus AI, like it's all going to be just taking over and working for itself really quickly. I guess I would put to you guys, like, how realistic is that? How realistic is it that we are going to be coming in situations where both attackers and defenders are AI against each other? There's AI arms race. And if it is realistic, when and what might that look like? Is it really going to be what people are sort of prophesizing that it will be?
What was the prophecy? Anyway.
I guess we were talking about earlier on, the three of us, around like that's that new arms race. It's AI versus AI. It's going to be going off its own accord. How realistic is this? And if it is, like, when might that happen? And what might this actually look like in reality?
I could jump in quickly regarding the part where is it really hopeless? Yeah, right. I was also thinking about this because there's really not a lot of solution to the prompt injection, indirect and direct. Just because, again, you have the infrastructure where um, executives right now are are pressured to show return on investment with their AI, and they really need to integrate AI and um, make more employees use it. So in this type of environment, your AI will connect to your email accounts. You will need to give it more autonomy and access to some of your private assets. For example, just connecting it to your email, right? And then this corporate environment, you have, again, as mentioned, it's connecting to several servers behind, and then um, connecting to LLM multiple times in just one query. So just just this for me, the real solution, or is the classic isolation, identity, and access. Um, there is also a problem that right now the data plane and the control plane is not separate in the current MCP um, protocol. Google is creating an A A2A, I believe, or another protocol that hopefully can reduce this or can bring more control, um, uh, more separation to the control and data plane. So isolation, and grabbing the identity and access management of your organization, managing them well is still the solution.
Yeah, I see that there's going to be a kind of explosion of enterprise ready incarnations of what we're talking about right now. It's like sort of a lot of folks using commercial tools, new AI enabled browsers. It's really just like bolting on AI assistants, like personal focus assistants onto your enterprise or your work related stuff. Inside Personio, we've got, of course, enterprise ready tools that we're adopting. Not all vendors and not all technologies are at that point. And as we were talking about just now, there's a long way to go, even at the service provider level, at the cloud provider level. They're still figuring this stuff out. And I think I heard in a podcast recently, the concept we were talking about was cloud to cloud authentication using OAuth. And the phrase was it's an OAuth soup. Once you make the soup, it's really difficult to unmake it or to separate the ingredients. And I think this is where we're going. It's just going to be a soup of different things talking to each other, and we're going to have to figure out how to live with it.
I feel like we could talk about this for so long. There's so much to dig into, but I'm going to move us along because I'm aware that we're running on the time. So we've got some great questions in the chat. I think Pranav drew attention to one as well just a second ago around the return on investment and the business value. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think that that's something that would be very interesting for quite a few people watching. We've all touched on it during this webinar already so far. There is so much hype around AI and security. There's so much noise around it at the moment. So how can we make those smart and justifiable investments in AI security without getting caught up in that hype? So yeah, Andrew, I'll stick with you for a second. How are we able to measure that return on investment for the AI security powered platforms?
Yeah, we've been going back and forth as a group about this. I think ultimately go back to basics, right? We're security practitioners. We have a lot of experience that we bring. So in terms of like return on investment, how to measure the investment, you have your metrics, your work allocation metrics, your tickets, your time to resolution, things like that. You can sort of A/B test with the tool, with the AI agent, without it, see what the performance improvement could be, how much is the time saved, how much is the cost saved. And then also on the fundamental side, your budgeting fundamentals. So nothing's coming for free, even though a lot of these tools are sort of like promising reduced cost upfront. But we all know that in the future, the bills are going to come due, even if the cost for technology comes down. At some point, there's going to be a price hike for these sort of things. And I think bringing smart budget and smart risk management fundamentals, not putting all of your tasks and your critical workloads into one tool, with one company. These are all smart plays that you have in your toolkit even before all this stuff was created. So yeah, I'm thinking in those directions, and I know we spoke about it already. I think it's just stick to the basics, stick to what we know.
Let's not complicate it too much. Okay, wonderful. And that leads in as well into around like, what is the business case then for using these AI platforms compared to more traditional methods? You've talked about costs. So how are we going to justify these costs to the business? Like, why should we not just stick with, or where are maybe the areas as well where we can stick with traditional methods versus where AI is best placed? Edward or Pranav, feel free to jump in.
Go ahead, Pranav.
Yes, I think like Andrew said, like if we could use the traditional metrics, like the MTTD, MTTR, and if we could tick off a bunch of risk items from the risk register, or if we have the classic 5x5 risk metrics, and you have a couple of risks which are in the top quadrant where it's the high likelihood, high impact, and if you can bring it down, that's good enough value. It's easy to understand. It's easy to convey to the board and to the leadership. And yeah, the false positive rates, false negative rates, and those are the metrics that I usually go for. And I think it's in terms of overall OpEx, I guess this is a big one, because I think the classic question from the leaderships on AI is like, hey, how can we augment our team with AI? Do we really need to invest in 2 more or 3 more level 1 analysts? How can we equip our tier 3, tier 2 analysts with AI? And we could save that operational expenses. So those areas, if you actually put in the work over a quarter, you could probably be able to show some value. But then again, it's like Andrew said, it's built on this reduced pricing models, which we should be taking account to. So most of the companies are like venture capital funded, or and with hyperscaler credits and whatnot. So they would need their money back either tomorrow or day after. So the money that we are saying today, because of increased, shorter MTTD and all the risk reduction, are we gonna spend that in the same technologies tomorrow? So that's a question I'm still haven't got an answer to that.
If I may add in on the corporate ROI benefits, I think the more direct is, for example, investigation times. I think especially on the compliance, summarizing, collecting vendor requirements, looking at different, reading different SOC reports, etc. You will do that hours previously if you want to be tight and neat on your report, but now you can just feed it to Notebook LM and then ask a bunch of questions, and then it's pretty accurate. So from hours, definitely it will become minutes for delivering those reports. Another thing that would be a good ROI is, definitely what executives are trying is to ensure more efficient resource allocation. I'll just mention this around threat modeling, for example. You need different personas, like the product, a security person that thinks about the threat paths, the engineer who will create basically you need probably 5 personas, especially if you are starting a project. There is now these products that are being created where even these personas will be replaced by agents. Yeah, you need to give one agent that will, draw, and you need to give them access to your assets just to create the model properly with the existing assets. But now those personas can be replaced, and probably you would not want critical projects to be given to give those personas power to critical projects, but at least the medium to low um, use cases you can give to this AI. So you need 5 people before. Now you just need one person to ensure that those AIs are working well.
Definitely going to touch on that in a little bit as well, because that's something that I get a lot of questions around as well, how it's going to change roles. One last thing on this topic, I guess, would be around like we're sold on the business case. We are sold on what it can do. It's worth the investment. Like, it's time to pick the right tool. Again, you guys touched on it previously. There's a lot of new tools. It's getting easier to create new tools, to bring them onto the market. So how can we tell what is real, what's really going to benefit our organizations, and what's just really great marketing? So how are we going to cut through that noise? I'm going to stick with you for a second, Edward, as well, because I think you had some interesting points on like what we can consider.
Yeah, like I said a while ago, there on the technical side, there are engineering challenges that vendors are now more bold to solve. For example, log standardization. Yep. Uh, it's a very difficult problem. Everyone knows this, especially if you are a bigger company. You have more complexity in your system. But right now, vendors are claiming that they can interpret logs, unstructured or structured, to lessen the hallucination. You just need to deploy them to different groups of systems and then have a central um, uh, agent AI where you will query. Uh, so um, this is this is one way. Yeah, but for you to choose the right, for example, this is the problem that you want to resolve in your company. You have to test heavily because this is very new. I don't have personally an experience on how effective is this AI in interpreting unstructured um, data, especially if your company has a proprietary log format. Like, how will that perform? How many false positives would that uh yeah, but vendors are very, when you hear them, it sounds very good that they can resolve this. I would say Andrew might have more experience to this because he has more experience on SOC operations. But for me, you need to test heavily. Don't believe what they say. Test heavily.
Yeah, I can just add a quick few seconds. I know we want to jump to another topic, but what I can feel and see is that there's going to eventually become waves of vendors. There's going to be like different vendors being acquired, merging with bigger ones, and expanding into new markets. There's this agentic kind of market that's just being created and being opened up right now. And then there's the old school, the original players, the cloud providers, the big software providers. And so those folks are also looking to innovate, whether through acquisition or through internal R&D. Those folks are also potentially going to supersede or overtake some of those early contenders that are coming out right now. So there's no magic answer. I would say let's go back to fundamentals and say, regardless of what product you're buying, as Edward was saying, you definitely want to deeply evaluate the product. Does it do what it advertises to do? Really put energy into proof of value, proof of concept. But also doing the due diligence about the provider. Is it a 1 or 2 person startup that is sort of like writing things as they go and sort of making up the service agreements as we go along? Or is it more of a trusted name that's been partnered with by people in your peer group or even other security practitioners? So, lean on your networks, back to basics, due diligence. That's what I would preach.
Do your homework essentially in all areas. Wonderful. Again, plenty more that we could say about this, but I would love to talk about something that I'm personally very interested in, something that I'm getting a lot of questions about from the people who I'm speaking with, and that is, how is AI going to be changing our security teams? Edward, you mentioned it before. We're going to need less people in some areas because AI is going to take on those more repetitive tasks. But I also want to just focus on that, some of the positives from this as well, and the opportunities that are going to come from this. So where are some opportunities within our security teams? What are some great things that it's going to bring? What are maybe some new roles that it might create? Let's kick off with that first. Yeah.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of benefits we have touched on already. Um, one is resource efficiency. So if you have a very specific use case um, in your company, for example, the compliance workflow, there are a lot of touch points there where you can use AI for you to solve the what for you, so that you can proceed on an analysis and the so what of stuff. And also, yeah, so resource efficiency is one. Also, you can use it for pattern recognition, right? For example, probably it's very hard for a security engineer to analyze, gigabytes of buffers, or a compliance person analyzing a lot of documents. You can definitely use transform those to PDFs, feed it to LLM, and then analyze. So these are some of the things that I would say are beneficial.
Yeah, I think we picking up to one of our previous threads. It's just and what you said, Charlotte. It's just exciting. Like you have that rush of like, I just solved something that I probably couldn't have solved 12 or 24 months ago without this technology. So there's definitely like a sugar rush that we get when we see it for the first time. I'm really excited about this for folks who are trying to pivot into a new career. I know we also spoke. Some of us are using agents and assistants to learn new languages. So it's really like enabling people who are really under pressure, who might not have a lot of time and bandwidth to explore new opportunities. It's making those people very capable very quickly. So it's super exciting. And it's really well suited for people who are resource constrained, like people leaders, as well as our more junior and our evolving and growing colleagues. They now have a resource to talk to, a resource, many resources to learn from. So yeah, it's super exciting time for me. Maybe Pranav, you have some experiences as well.
Yeah, it's the same. I think it's very exciting to see. I have a work student in my team, and this is his first job, and it's very exciting to see him just jumping onto this, and I mean, skipping the basics entirely, of course, and then just jumping straight into the, creating applications with vibe coding and creating solutions, daisy chaining agents, and all of that. It's interesting and also I think the access to that kind of knowledge, where back in the days, you need to go and I took a lot of Cisco courses and CCNA, to learn about networking, I don't know, 15 years ago, and to Microsoft Essentials and whatnot. Where now it's you learn on the go and you do it. And that's not to say that way the old ways are the right way or the new ways are the wrong. I think it's up to every one of us to create that and learn, and doesn't really think about like what's right or wrong. It's the skill development has been crazily fast, and it's quite exciting to see. And also you see the output like immediately, like you prompt it really well, you iterate, you improve, you maintain.
Yeah, you're
So
missing all the
that's
hard
really
work.
Yeah, I'm slightly jealous, but also excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think we're going to hop on some questions, since we've had quite a few, and we were going to talk a little bit around some standards, and that's come up in a couple of the questions already. So let's get to it and try and answer as many of these as possible. I'll let you guys take a quick look at the questions that have been put in there, and just let me know who wants to hop onto those. So while everyone's just taking a little look at that, thank you so much to everyone who has been writing in questions. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. I think that it's been quite obvious that whether you're building, whether you're buying, whether you're implementing AI in your organizations, it's not just the future, it's right now. And we just need to be doing our homework, looking into it. But there are so many opportunities that are coming from this as well. And I think that's something that I've definitely taken away from this conversation. Let's go on.
Charlotte, I see one question streaming in here, a few compliance related questions. I see one here from Seamus around how can we talk about AI mitigations when there isn't really a solid framework or management system yet? ISO, NIST, etc., still lack much clarity. Of course, on the other hand, we have AI potentially helping in automation in dev circles. I can put my hand up there, being a bit of a oblivious, not with a strong compliance background, but I can say, having loosely looked at these, I will return to my previous advice and say, like, go back to your fundamentals, go back to basics. And as these things are evolving, how do we keep up with other changes? We read about it, we speak to our industry peers, and we do the work. So if there's not a really solid framework for you, you're going to have to pull different components from those frameworks that are out there and that do exist. So that's one way I would kind of approach that problem. But I don't have a magic answer for you, Seamus. Maybe Pranav or Edward has some more experience in that category.
Yeah, I think the high level frameworks like the NIST RMF or the ISO are, whenever there is a new technology comes into the world, they will be forced to, release these frameworks and provide guidance. Because this is such changing, evolving technology, it's very difficult. So I 100% agree with what Andrew said to stick with the fundamentals, go with the classic risk reduction principles, layering defenses.
Maybe
You can't really.
one thing I can jump in, Pranav, sorry to jump in front of you. I would also look to your security testing partners, right? A lot of the best partners out there, they're building up the bench, they're building up the skill sets to test and to assist with the introduction of these frameworks and to go in and validate your applications and your data stores according to these frameworks. So I would also really tap your testing partners and see where they can support you on this, because they're much better resourced for supporting you there.
I will tie up my added information or answer to this by answering Rugero's question. He asked, do you think that the AI threat taxonomy is well covered by ISO, IEC, this 27090 and related NIST standards? So AI, everything about AI, even the security information are just, different organization just updating one after the other. And it's very, it's updating fast. And I would say right now that I won't be surprised if the NIST standards, for example, are not covering all of the AI threat taxonomy. But I would say the fundamentals would still be the same and should be applied to all of those AI threat taxonomy. The approach that I will take is to consider the created threat modeling advice for AI integrated systems called Maestro, right? Because that is focused on the uncertainty that AI is bringing in to the threats, because you don't know how AI will behave basically. So have the foundations, but also use Maestro for your threat modeling to cover all of those threats in the AI threat taxonomy.
Final question we've got coming in as well here. So we've got time for one more. What skills should organizations be prioritizing developing internally versus outsourcing to vendors or partners?
I think data literacy, I would say. Understanding what's the how to query different data sets, precision, recall, finding hallucinations and so on. I think it's important to see that I think that the fundamentals is very important to so you know what to compare against. So those are the skills I would say we should be looking at to upskill our engineers.
For me, it depends on the threat appetite of your organization. I would say, as a general rule, all the critical processes in your company, you need to have more human in the loop on those critical processes and systems. But for critical threats or risks, but for the medium and low ones, and that would differ for business to business, that's where you look for opportunities that this one can be taken by AI. So just a general rule.
I think maybe the one thing we haven't talked about from the question would be which things to develop internally versus partnering with. I guess it's first of all about your budget and risk appetite that we spoke about, how many partners you can have. I really, in terms of like developing internal skills, people really need to be polishing up their soft skills, I would say. So there's also, there's this concept of critical thinking, being able to look at something and understand like what is wrong with this picture. This is going to become super important. Another thing I would say that's going to become important, almost everyone, as Pranav said, is going to need to be data literate, or like really basically a pretty good developer to be able to understand what they're doing, understand what they're looking at. There's not going to be much space for non-developers or people who have never looked at code or never looked at raw data before. This is going to be super important. So everyone's going to be leveling up in the next generation.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of you for those answers to the questions. We are coming to the end of our webinar. So again, thank you so much for everyone joining us. Thank you so much to you guys, to Pranav, to Edward, to Andrew. It's been awesome having you here. Do you guys have any, maybe a closing line, how you would sum up, what do you want someone to take away from this webinar if they take one thing? I'm going to go to Andrew first and put you on the spot.
Yeah, two main things I would say, like stay excited, stay curious, and don't be a defeatist. You know, always keep an open mind to adapting. I know it's not very common for security folks, but keep an open mind and stay hungry and look for new opportunities.
Love that.
Yeah.
Pranav?
I think I'm just going to copy Andrew and then say like stick to the basics. Also, what Edward said earlier, you know, like put a human in the loop when it touches production.
And Edward, what about you?
Something outside of security, I would just want to say, have a clear vision of what you wanted to do, because you all, basically everyone has a smart assistant right now. And the clearer your vision is, the faster you can get there in the age of AI. But on the security side, I would say, yes, on the negative side, AI introduced complexities. And on the positive side, probably you can see that it introduced scale and efficiency. But the work of security is still the same. Due diligence and due care for everything. Keep that passion, keep it alive, and be a cool security guy. Yeah.
I love that. I'm not even going to add any words to that. I was going to, but I feel like that's a really nice line to end on. So yeah, look, for everyone who is watching, everyone who's put the questions in, please do stay connected. If there are any topics that we didn't get to, we'd love to all continue the conversations afterwards, after this session. So please feel free to drop any of us a message on LinkedIn, connect with us. And yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.